Hello everyone, this is Ben Dunn, your AP Sensei, returning from Bell County Comic Con this past weekend. The weekend of, today is August 4th, so it would have been the 2nd and 3rd over the weekend. It was really, really fun. Bell County is a comic book convention held in Temple, Texas, which is in the halfway point between Austin and Dallas. So this year, I had a lot of fun. It seemed like the audience, the attendees of the convention was far larger than last year. And we did quite a bit better. Enterprise was set up. They invite us to set up there, and we appreciate it. We thank them for putting up with us and giving us a spot on their esteemed convention floor. And I talked to a lot of fans and a lot of people who follow this channel, and it sort of inspired me to want to get back into the game, trying to do more videos. I've been very, very busy doing other things, because primarily my job is to create comics, to oversee the publications of Antarctic Press, and doing fulfillment on my Kickstarters. And all sorts of, things that just take away from my time. Plus, I have a family, and I would be neglectful if I didn't at least spend some time with them, for quality. But something interesting happened over the weekend that I have to go ahead and get it off my chest, basically. We were set up next to Eric July's RIPPERVERSE. Now, I've been following the antics of the RIPPERVERSE and their beef with Comicsgate, and I've come to a conclusion. What is that conclusion? Well, I believe, and this is strictly my opinion, but I think I have some evidence to back it up, because I've been around the block a few times. Antarctic Press has been around since 1985. And that's 40 years of consistently publishing comics over that time. And I've seen a lot of changes. Some good, some ill. And I can see things, I experience things that I think only someone who has been around the block a few times can come to some sort of conclusion. This conclusion is just, I believe that Eric July's RIPPERVERSE will be successful and Comicsgate will ultimately fail. And this is, my reasoning behind it. Now, I did get a chance to actually meet Eric July at the convention, so I'm not going to be biased in my assessment of this, opinion. The thing is that he was genuine, and very friendly, a very nice guy. He seemed, to really be enthusiastic about what he's doing. Now, I could see from our vantage point that every time he showed up at his table, he would attract a huge throng of people. He is the driving force behind that company. I mean, it would be like if Stan Lee or Jack Kirby appeared at a Marvel table and they would instantly bring a throng of people. He's like that. Okay. I've also been following the antics of quote unquote Comicsgate, because I was at the ground floor of Comicsgate. I was at the birth of that whole movement. For those of you who don't believe me, this whole thing really got off the ground. Some people say it was the so-called milkshake photo of the female editors at Marvel, but it really got off the ground because of Richard C. Myers. We, Antarctic Press, was going to publish Jawbreakers, Richard C. Myers' comic, and we were bullied by other people in the industry to not publish it, and we unfortunately relented. I personally did not want to do that, but I was overruled by the remaining editorial staff. So we ultimately canceled the book. That led to Richard C. Meyer having a huge success, on Indiegogo. And because of the outrage that ensued. And he parlayed that into something much, much bigger. And that led to other creators to follow suit, because Richard C. Meyer at that time had one of the largest backed campaigns at that time, and it was amazing. I had even considered joining Comicsgate in its early infancy, but cooler heads prevailed, and they talked me out of joining. So I did not pursue it any further. And besides, I had my own Antarctic Press, which I was just getting back into, and I've decided that this was a better course to follow. And I do not regret it. Don't regret it, not one bit. Now, that led to the so-called movement, the Comicsgate movement, that's being headed by our self-professed leader of Ethan Van Sciver, who I greatly admire as a very proficient artist. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I haven't read anything by him, so I can only go by what I've seen, online, and the guy can draw. There's no question about it. He's a very, very consummate professional. What I consider and this could be his online persona. He could be the nicest, sweetest guy in the world, and I have no doubt that he probably is. But his online persona is what I consider very bombastic, over the top, and very confrontational. And I don't believe in the long term that's going to help him, in terms of maintaining that momentum. Sooner or later, and this always happens to every creator in the world, he's going to run out of steam. He's going to get to the point where he cannot sustain what he's doing at a level that is sustainable. It always happens. It's inevitable. Okay, how you overcome that means you have to evolve and change, and make adjustments so that you can maintain your readership, your customer base, because that's really the most important thing, is your customer base. I try to avoid politics. I try to avoid being confrontational, because there's really no sense in it. It makes no sense. Unless you're wanting to try to attract a base that is always enraged or needs the next drama, then you have to sustain that. And otherwise they'll leave, because you're no longer entertaining them. I like to go the long route where I build my customer base based on, the merits of my work and how I treat them. And this is the way I treat, my customer base and my, and people in general. You treat them with respect. You treat them, like how you would want to be treated. And this is where I think Comicsgate will go off the rails. Because they're very confrontational. They're insulting to the point of wanting to, and they feel good about it. They feel giddy about it. I don't know, and I don't know what their end game is, but it never lasts. Because things like that never do. Sooner or later it's going to come to a head. There's going to be a pie. The thing I noticed but this is the difference, is that the thing I noticed about Eric July was that he treated all his customers with respect. He was friendly, he was outgoing, he listened to people, and that is the big difference. I can understand why, I don't know what the level of quality of his work is. I looked at his stuff on the table, and I have to admit it was very high quality work. The covers are very attractive. I can see why people would gravitate towards something like that. And Eric created a model that works for him. He's not beholden to Kickstarter or Indiegogo or anybody else for that. He's his own man. He decides the direction. He decides where he's the ultimate decider of where his company is going to go. When people attack his work, can you blame him for needing to defend it? I mean, it'd be like anything. If your work was being attacked, you would feel obligated to defend it, wouldn't you? I mean, this is just the way it, and yet people attack him for wanting to defend his work. And and I think, that I've been following his channel, from the early stages, and I did like his bombastic attitude. He did seem to have something to say, and he said it in a way that was not only entertaining, but was over the top, and it seemed to he really seemed to express himself in a manner that I thought was sincere. I don't know if that's just his online persona. It could be just an act. Sometimes people do that. They put on an act, to attract their customer base, but in reality, they're just the opposite. They're people you just don't expect based on what they how people perceive themselves online. And that's the thing, is that when I actually met him in person, I mean, he knew who I was. He really was genuine and sincere, and he seemed very, very friendly. I don't know him personally. I'll be honest with you. I would like to get to know him more, because he seemed like someone that I could work with in the future if the opportunity were to ever present itself. But he seems to be doing quite well, and I only wish him the best of luck. He seems to have a plan. You see, that's the thing, is that he has a plan. The thing about Comicsgate is that it's a movement without really a plan. Their only plan is that it's a collection of a bunch of creators who are using it as a way to elicit outrage so that you'll support their projects. Because on its face value, I think most of those projects would do a fraction of what they would have done if not for the Comicsgate label on it. But I'm seeing it's slowing down. I mean, let's face it. Sooner or later, the movement is going to run out of steam unless they can somehow reinvigorate it in some fashion that will attract, a new customer base. Because the sooner or later the customer base is going to get tired of the antics. They're going to move on to something else. Because there's a lot to choose from. There's a lot of comics out there. A lot of very talented people are creating comics, including myself, who are doing things that are doing things that appeal to a large audience. And that's why I believe, I am loath to predict the future, but based on what I've seen and where things are going, I honestly believe that the RIPPERVERSE is going to destroy Comicsgate, because Eric has a plan. He knows what he's doing. He knows where he's going. He's hiring people, and creating things on a regular basis, and he's delivering on his promises to put out a product in a timely fashion. My only suggestion to him, Eric, if you're listening, is to possibly, get into other venues like comic stores or 7-Elevens or Walmart or, things like that. I'm sure you're thinking about that. I'm almost certain that in the back of your mind, you want to expand your media empire, and that's really the end game for you, isn't it? That's the end game for almost every creator. The thing is that you have to not feel like people can approach you. You have to make people feel they can approach you and think, this is a man I can do business with. If you think about it, the people of Comicsgate, when they're confrontational and political and attack other people, do you think investors will want to deal with somebody like that? I highly doubt it. I mean, it could be wrong, yes. I mean, if they're making a huge cultural impact, then maybe. I mean, they could to the level of J.K. Rowling or Stephen King. Perhaps people may overlook that, but even they had to make compromises. I mean, before they became famous, did you even know what Stephen King's political views were or J.K. Rowling's political views were? No, nobody did. They let the work speak for themselves. It's only after they made their millions, or in some cases billions of dollars, that they finally said, you know what? I got FU money. I can say whatever I want. When you get to the point where you have FU money, then you can have any opinion you want and nobody will care. Or where they care and you don't care what they think, because you have more than enough to say, it doesn't matter to me what you think. This is what I think and this is what I'm going to do. Comicsgate hasn't got to that point yet. I would almost guarantee you ask any person on the street, who Cyberfrog is, and they'll just look at you and say, Cyber what? And I mean, the same goes for almost every single comic book. There are very few comics that have reached the stratosphere of ingrained pop culture memory. And that's really what we as creators all strive for. We want to reach that level. I understand that this is a dream that almost every creator has. They're not content with just making a comic. They want to make a real impact. They want to make an impact on the culture. They want to make an impact on humanity. Because that's what artists do. They want to make a difference. It's just how you go about to do that, is the key factor. Now, I'm just, a small creator. Been in business for 40 years, but I've never achieved a huge, tremendous breakout success. Even with Warrior Nun, we got 2 seasons on Netflix. I never enjoyed the fruits of whatever the success that was. But at least it got made, and at least has my name on it. So I'm making strides. It's been taking me forever to get it done, but I like to think that I'm trying to do whatever I can, to help, further, the exposure of my creations. And the best way for me is just to focus, on my creations and do the best job I can to entertain my customer base. Ninja High School is almost at issue 200, and actually it is at issue 200, and I'm want to continue on to 300. I hope I'll get to that point and beyond. If God willing, I live that long. I know I'm not going to be around forever. If ever I were to pass away, I would love to leave Ninja High School in the public domain and let anybody who wants to do Ninja High School can keep doing it, forever. It's just one of those things that I think I'm just want to give back. But anyway, I just wanted to say I really did enjoy attending Bell County. Kudos to everyone putting it together. Thank you for putting up with us, and letting us out. I really enjoy the people who attend, and I really enjoy my meeting with Eric July, as short as it was. Hopefully we'll meet again someday and we'll have a longer conversation. But until then, keep at it. And until next time, this has been Don signing off.
I'm Heidi Euphori, just a regular girl in Quagmire. At least I was, until I was stuck with these powers.
When the skies seem their darkest, when evil draws